It's just fantastic.
Hello everyone, welcome to the exhibition of stupid people. Today we're going to start with a tweet from Dexter2. Twitch streamer Carney Jared destroyed his room after missing one note in a 2-hour in Clone Hero song. One note in a 2-hour in Clone... You missed the word stream, didn't you, or video or whatever. There's something missing here. Included is a 1-minute video from Carney Jared's Twitch.
22. No! No!
I can't be the only person that thinks upon watching this that perhaps destroyed is misused. I've seen more damage done to a bedroom from Rotoshaw when he threw chairs at walls, back when he was doing FIFA and just destroying chairs because he could. I've seen more damage done to someone's keyboard when it gets thrown at a wall, when the keys just pop off. So many in the replies do point out that this is an overstatement. I figured we start with a nice, simple, totally not overstated incident before we get to a vastly more entertaining subject concerning the world's fakest African-American, Rachel Dolezal. No, not Sean King, of course, we'll get to them another time. Libs of TikTok had tweeted out two things concerning Rachel Dolezal. Now, I had forgotten Rachel existed. If you don't know who she is, in 2017 she was called out because it turns out the NAACP president, Rachel Dolezal, lied about being black. In fact, she's a blonde, white, freckly girl, and her parents were like, what's this? Just turns out Rachel desperately wanted to be black so she could relate to the struggle of African Americans, be more of a victim than she was, using her white female privilege to do so. But also she had a real hankering for certain peen, and well, apparently only black women are entitled to such girth, length, satisfaction. She was rightly yeeted from the NAACP. She was battered by the court of public opinion. She was battered by the NAACP. She was battered into submission and ended up going underground a bit. She did try and downplay things a little, and I have covered her before in video form. If you're interested, I'll link it in the pinned comment with today's sources. Over time, things got a bit tough for her, so she joined Only Fibro Fupa Failing at Adult Acting site, fans. And this is where her white trash really shine. It's where she belonged, but she needed to pay her bills. Can't hate the player, right? Everyone's entitled to make their bread, and of course everyone's entitled to some form of employment. In her case, self-employment. Whether she was at all moderately or reasonably successful on that site, I don't know. But I am very much aware much of the content she had posted to that site would more than likely be leaked to places like Google. She is still trying her best to culturally appropriate, all the while being involved in Only Fibro Fupa Failing at Adult Acting fan site stuff. Yes. She's also been a teacher. To go under the radar though, Rachel changed her name. I don't know how you pronounce the first name, but the last name is Diallo. Nkecki. Nkeki? Let's call her Kex, because if you're British, that's funny. She went from being an African Studies professor in Washington State to being an employee at the Catalina Foothills Unified School District. Courtesy of Libs of TikTok, it was because these were noticed, her Only Fibro Fupa Failed Acting and all that stuff, adult acting, fan site thing, the school governing board has taken action because it turns out they don't think that her actions on that site align with the values of the school, because there is in fact a policy on explicit photos being shared by employees. They even include in the article some blurred images I cannot show you here, yes, no, it's fairly explicit. The one thing I'm quite impressed by is that she's really committed to making herself look completely lightly tanned. That's about it. Julie Farbarek is the district's director of alumni and community relations, said that in a statement that the posts of Diallo or Rachel Dolezal are contrary to our district's use of social media by district employees policy and our staff's ethics policy. We only learned of the Only Fupa Fibro Failed at Adult Film Acting fans account via social media posts yesterday afternoon. She no longer is employed by the Catalina Foothills School District. She was hired last August with her contract expected to run through May of this year. About a month after she was hired at the school, she then made a post on her only Fupa Fiber failed adult film acting fans account that received many likes, equating to $1,200 for just one photo. Rachel claimed back in 2021 that she joined because after applying for jobs she was qualified for, after interviews she got turned down, even applying for jobs without degrees like being a maid at a hotel or working at a casino, she was unsuccessful. Things have been quite difficult for Rachel over the years. Back in 2019, she had to, because of a welfare fraud case, pay $9,000 in restitution and complete 120 hours of community service, which equates to about 7 photos of hers or 8-ish on only Fupa Fibro failed at film adult acting fan site thing place, Doodle, what's it, whatchamacallit, and all those other wonderful words that I can't be asked to put in a correct line so it would actually make more sense. So moving on from Rachel Dolezal, we need to talk about the Sussexes in the form of the Duke and Duchess, Prince Harry and Meghan Harry. Yep. As I had correctly predicted, not so long ago in fact, their relevancy has been changing of late. We recently discussed their charity has had a downward tick in donations, their activity less well received, some of the rather contrived nonsense they fabricated last year in the form of a car chase high speed in New York City, hilarious, has led to their popularity waning even further. I had said this would happen because Harry was a one-trick pony that only wanted to crap on his family. But upon the announcement of the king being diagnosed with a form of cancer, he was back here in a heartbeat, showing there is still signs that he actually gives a damn about his family. But there was no reconciliation between him and William, and it's unlikely to ever happen. It especially would not happen when William becomes king. Harry has since gone home. The Sussexes have kept themselves busy because they realise that their Archwell brand is kind of in need of a bit of a rebrand, a shake-up to make it look a bit more versatile, perhaps remove the taint of what they represent. Since Meghan's not got any acting work going on and their Spotify's doing oh so well, you can imagine they're going to be quite busy going forward with this rebrand. With this rather simplistic rebrand, there are some points to take from it. The BBC, for example, have started with 5 key points to take away from the rebranding. One is a feel-good message. The website opens up with a dark blue page, a colour that brand marketeers like to associate with trust, quality, not to mention royalty. Then a picture of the couple emerges smiling and applauding. It is a feel-good message of positivity and togetherness. We Brits just call it propaganda because British people don't smile. It's in fact written in our genetic code as the letters SODOFF. Go check it, you'll find it, it's true. The second point, the Office of. There is an ex-presidential vibe about the new site with its Office of, coat of arms, worthy ambitions and the biographies looking back on former triumphs and awards. The third, royal links. While they'll happily use the title of Sussex and the coat of arms, they haven't really gone so far as to use much in the way of their ties to the royal family. While Harry's profile mentions his military career, his charities and his doorstop, Spare, charitably considered a memoir, the reduced presence of his royal connections is a sign of him trying to distance himself from that, which is the right move if you intend to push forward, but don't forget here, he made his millions after getting loads from his dad off of crapping on his family name. The fourth, Meghan as a feminist. I feel like we need to go back to the anti-SJW days. We are due a renaissance, aren't we? Meghan has decided to focus strongly on her work supporting women with a biography introducing herself as a feminist and champion of human rights and gender equity. Gender equity is bollocks. If you'd like to disagree with me on that, by all means do so down below. A lot of the methods used by many businesses to push equity usually comes at the cost of men working harder to accommodate for it. Quote, her lifelong advocacy for women and girls remains a constant thread in her humanitarian and business ventures. Remember when I earlier said that the smiling was propaganda? So's that. The fifth point, don't forget the titles. They might not be working royals even if they sometimes seem to be a parallel royal court, but there is one place where they clearly assert their family connections. They use their children's titles, describing them as Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Dress code casual, but don't forget the titles. That's the message that the BBC take from the website. Personally, I think that both those children shouldn't have those titles in the first place. When King Charles took over, and actually just before when Queen Elizabeth was on the throne, they were reducing the presence of titles for those who were children of royals. intention being to make it a bit more streamlined. Additionally, you are no longer a working royal. While it is your birthright to be Prince Harry because of your birthright, your children don't benefit from that, because you are no longer a royal family member. In fact, you are in name only. Your title should be the name of the owl at my sister's wedding, Pitta, an acronym, because what you really are is a pain in the arse. Sarah Vine for the Daily Mail, and by all means disregard the Daily Mail if you wish, believes that what the king needs to do is take away the Sussex's titles to stop their nonsense. Because in reality, what does the king actually have to lose by doing so? The reality is nothing. There is no optics against King Charles at present. And to be honest, him taking a firm stance against Harry and his bollocks and using his family name when it suits him would do the king and serve the king better to make him look a bit more assertive. It was confirmed in Sarah Vine's article that Prince William is actually the one to refuse to see his brother on this flying visit. And I get it, because William doesn't have to see anyone if he doesn't want to. Least of all some reprobate snake who would turn his back on his family at the first notice of a £1 note and a whiff of pussy that might let him shag her for a change. Other articles also point out that with this rebrand the stakes are quite high for the Sussexes at the moment, and I actually agree, because they need this to work within the next 12 months, or what they are trying to accomplish will continue to diminish further. There will be no renaissance for them. Like a YouTube career, they rose, they plateaued, and now they're on the decline. So I assume they'll have a YouTube channel in the near future where they bleat on about the same crap they've already bleated on about. Or maybe they'll join blood sports. That's due a renaissance, right? Honourable mention time in the form of a brief response video. We have discussed multiple times, in fact, people who are quite large, making unnecessary and quite frankly laughable demands at airlines' expenses to accommodate for their size. They do accommodate for them, by the way. They charge you for a second seat. A lot of those videos responded to are typically on a Megon 2 electric boogaloo. I highly recommend if you're interested in a more response video blunt format, you go there and enjoy the content. As the person we're about to respond to is English, I thought I'd put it here, because you're English, you should know better.
If you have a problem with someone's fat body, because that's what it is, it's fat, overspilling it into your seat, that's not the person's problem, okay? It's the airline's problem, because that's who you're paying your money for. It means they're not an inclusive company. They're not including people of different sizes.
You see what I have to deal with? If you've watched any of the Omegon 2 content, and you are familiar with how I would usually respond to this, thank you. For the sake of it, airlines actually accommodate for the larger percentage of people who use their service, who are typically smaller. It is entirely the fault of the person who booked that one seat that they don't fit into their one seat. So the person who has been inconvenienced, the smaller person who fits in their seat having their personal space invaded by a rather rotund interloper, have every right to try and find a way to squish you back into your seat. Airliners will seek, like any other company, to make as much money as possible. This isn't rocket science. I would love to see someone who is a bit larger try and fit into a Concorde seat, and I've seen how people struggled when they are smaller.
So if it's affecting you, think how much it's affecting that person. Now, her response to this was that people should measure their bodies and the seats before they book a flight. Find me a flight that's size inclusive, because I've never heard of it.
I'll be honest with you, everything you've said is a massive deflection. Some companies in America are starting to be more inclusive, but it's going to hit them harder, and they're going to have to up their prices to accommodate for it. That's another point that has to be raised here. When you are larger, you take up more space. Do try, if you can for a second, imagine what it would be like to be a rather rotund individual booking a flight on Ryanair. They would fleece you. You would end up having to sell your skin to act as a shield for the entire plane before you could even step foot on the plane, and they'd still charge you extra for your luggage. I'm not going to respond to the rest of that video because obviously it would just be going around in circles and regurgitating the same points. I just wanted to highlight it as an honourable mention because you're English and you should know better. So on to the next subject. On the 5th of February 2024, it was finally announced an action was starting to take place at the home of Hannah Ingram Moore. Hannah Ingram Moore, we have discussed here a few times within the exhibition of Stupid People, is the daughter of Sir Captain Tom Moore, the man who during COVID walked around his garden so much and raised over £30 million for the NHS. He became a bit of a hero because of it. During COVID, it was inspiring. He was knighted. Queen Elizabeth did that herself. He wrote a few books, raised a lot of money. Sadly, he passed away. He left everything to his daughter, who then built a facility on site, but adjusted it to be more of a domicile and less a Foundation headquarters. She claimed it was offering therapies with spas and with swimming pools. Others said, no, you're destroying our view, which they were, and you're also turning it into an extra house, which is exactly what it looked like. After a lengthy set of appeals and hearings and blah blahs, the building in question has finally been demolished. Planning permission was originally granted for an L-shaped building on the grounds of the family home. If she had done that, and only that, it would have been fine. Instead though, she built a larger C-shaped building that contained a spa pool. She could have gotten away with the original building, and most of the building could have stayed up if it had abided the original dimensions of the L-shaped building, but she made it wider in every conceivable way, and taller, meaning those who have views behind their gardens no longer had those views because it was an obstruction and an eyesore. The building has now been removed and demolished. The ground has been leveled. The only thing that remains that was built in Captain Tom Moore's honour is the bench for his 100th birthday. In truth, I am a little curious to see what Hannah Ingram Moore does next, because money coming in, the well as it were, has, from Tom Moore's work, well and truly dried up. All she has left is the £1.2 million home he left her, and any money that he had, along with the money that she took from the book sales that he didn't want to go to her. Where Hannah goes next, I'm not entirely sure. The well, as far as her career and life goes, has been poisoned. What would appear to be better for her now would be to bury her head in the sand and wait for a considerable amount of time to pass, rather than using her father's name and deeds as clout.